Okay, so today we are going to change our ignition switch on our Westphalia. So first what we got to do is we're just going to pull out the front part here, and it just pops out. If I can get it out. There we go. One side and the other. And we pop it out just like so. And I'm just going to reposition the camera here. And then what we do next is we take this center nut off. You can see I've had it off a million times already, so I just mark it because it's not keyed. So you can put your steering wheel on wrong if you don't line up the teeth. So we're just going to take off this nut, pull off our steering wheel, and get to it. All we have under here is just our steering switch, which is just 3 flatheads, and then we're just going to take off this plastic piece here, whereas if I go down here, you can see there's just a couple Phillips bolts. That's all we have to take off for them. There's another one on this side. I think actually on my column, this one might even be cracked. Where are we here? And there's the other one. So really, that's all there is to it to get this whole top part off. So it's really easy. And I should mention, to get the bolt off, we need a 24 mil socket. So make sure when you're undoing it, you hold the wheel, because obviously if you turn it, you're going to turn the wheel. Now it's good to get a helper or someone just to help you hold the wheel, because if you lock the steering column, when you undo this, you're actually putting a lot of pressure on the steering column. So it can be done. I have done it before, but it's best practice to get someone to hold the wheel. Okay, now to get, there's a little plastic sleeve right there. You want to take that off. And then there'll be 2 Allen bolts right there, and they are size, if you can see there, it's an actual 6. So we'll stick that in there, and then we'll pull this thing, the whole ignition off. Once we get this off, I rigged up a little contraption here. I rigged up a little puller here. So just twist, and you can see it's just coming off just like that. This way we don't have to damage the housing at all. Some guys will just use a big pair of pliers or whatever, but this way there's no damage. Okay, so now that we got the sleeve off here, as you can see, there's nothing holding the ignition switch, just like that. Nice and easy to do. We have it turned here, so you put the key in and you just turn it. So start, and then just let it flip back. Just stay locked in that position. This will just loose just like this, nice and loose. And there, we can take this, wasn't even that loose. I'm gonna take it out. There we go, that's out. And now this, you can see it's loose, and we're just gonna pull it off. Okay, so I have it on the bench now. I have my new ignition switch there. That's part number there. And as you can see, pulled it off, and there's a little Phillips head there. It's a number 1. I'm gonna unscrew that, and then it should just pull right out of the bottom. Okay, so I have the 2 ignition switches here. Here's the original one I pulled out. That one, you probably won't be able to read it from the phone, no way. But anyway, this one, the original one said Germany. It's an aftermarket one, and it doesn't say Germany, but all the connections and everything are labeled, and it even has the right numbers. So I'm assuming this is probably the factory switch. Now, originally when I had it taken out, I put the key all the way to the start position. When I pulled the ignition switches out, if you look at them, this one you can see is like this, and you can see there you go, 2 different ways. So it looks like it's quarter turn. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'll just turn the key all the way to the off position, just like that, and then I'll be able to slide in the new switch. So the new switch comes in the off position. All right, so now we're just gonna put the switch back on. I'm gonna explain to you what I was doing actually with all this testing of the wiring and everything here, is I was just testing the front headlights weren't working. So it's either gonna be the switch here, the actual headlight switch, or is the ignition switch, because the ignition switch powers the headlight switch. So I'm going to show you, once I'm done here, there's an easy way to test it, just so you don't have to take your dash apart. But as for right now, we're just going to put this sucker, we're going to put it back on. I'm going to slide it nice, just like that. There we go. And I just got to put the phone down for a second, so I'll be able to do that. Okay, so we have the ignition switch back on. We put in our screw there. There's a little tiny Phillips head screw went back in, so the switch is in. And If we go trying to turn our switch now, turns perfectly, just like this. No issues. Just like that. There we go. Not a problem. Key comes out. Key goes back in. Just like that. Okay, so we got our little bolt there, our 6mm Allen key. It's all back in tight. Like I said, keys work good. So what we're gonna do is just give this a little wipe, just like this. That's fine, a little wipe. Then we got our collar. So we're gonna push our collar back on. It's a little tight here. So what I actually have to push the collar on is I got an old transmission tool. All it is, I even forget the number, it's a it's a matcher tool, a 244. So it'll go right like this, and I can, it'll go right like this, and I can just give it a tap back on. But if you don't, you can just be very careful with a hammer and go around. But I just use this tool because once again, there's no damage and it just seems to fit on it really nice to push it back on. The one thing I should mention is a couple guys, when they've done their columns, this part has slid back in, they've had issues. What I do all the time is I use a ball joint separator tool right here, and I'll give you a good angle from the side here. And you can see there, it just holds a column together. So we hold the column together, so this way when we're pushing up here, we never have to worry about this piece sliding down. So it actually makes it really easy to take it apart. There we are, we got a good view of up top. So now all we're gonna do is we're gonna put turn signal switch. You can see the 3 brass bolts, 1, 2, 3. And they line up with the 3 bolts right there. So this goes over top like here and just slides on, and then we're gonna do up those bolts. Okay, so I just slid it back on the column, here the turn signal switch. Now what I always do, and you might be able to hear this in the video, I'm not quite sure, is before I crank any screws down, this is always just a good habit of mine, I turn them backwards. There, and you can hear that little click. So once it goes click, you can tell I've hit the right thread, and we're never going to cross thread them going down. So I can start that on each one. There we go. And this way you never have an issue cross threading them down. And then you can just tighten them up, and then we'll start putting the plastics back on. Okay, so I got those 3 bolts tightened down. That's all there is to it. So now we're going to put the steering wheel back on. And if you've noticed right here, what I've done is I've just put a little black mark there, just with a felt tip. And what it does is it matches the mark on the steering wheel, because the steering wheel is not keyed. So you can see the little black mark on the bottom there, and a little black mark there. So I'm just going to make sure I line them up so my steering wheel goes on correctly. Okay, so as you can see, we got it lined up. It's back on. Then we take our 24mm nut, just like that. It's 24mm. Gonna thread it on, and then we're just gonna snug it up with a ratchet, and then our steering wheel will be back together. And actually you can see the original marks, the yellow, so it doesn't take much to torque it. They don't go too tight. So line those back up with the nut, and then you know it's exactly the same torque as it was before. Okay, so I have my wheel back on. So now just horn pad's gonna go popping back in. Make sure that none of these wires came loose. Right here you have the one there, it's the horn pad wires. Just make sure that they're still connected, and these ones obviously they're still connected to the ring, and those stayed on when we put the steering wheel. So we never actually had to disconnect these wires when we disconnected the steering wheel. And then this, we'll just pop back right in there, and then it'll be back together. There we go.